What's that?
Ruben might know the song.
Is that like Slim Shady?
Here we go, fam. Here we go. We got another election coming up. Welcome back to the Convo Couch, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pastor Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella. How's everyone? Hopefully good.
I hope so.
I hope so. There's a lot going on. We only have a few weeks left before November 6th, so I know we're all under a lot of stress.
We are under a crazy amount of stress.
So I just wanted to thank you guys again for joining us. Today we have a very special guest. He's a former candidate for the California Secretary of State, Ruben Major.
Hey, Ruben.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
It's a nice view of your oceanside area.
Yes.
Pretty sunny.
Yeah, it's a good time of year.
So we don't want to put the cart before the horse, and I know you're an expert on our voting machines and the election process itself.
Yes.
So we should start talking about election integrity and all of that that encompasses it. So first I want to start talking about as Pasta puts it, the Fugazi machines.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We felt that when you first were a candidate, you talked a lot about this stuff. However, it was lost because so many candidates going on. Now we're coming back into the fold. Election day is right around the corner, and you talked about these machines so far. We talked about the Fugazi machines. Could you enlighten us a little bit about, and the audience, about what types of machines we're using right here in California?
Well, unfortunately, right now we're still using machines that are vulnerable to hacking. Again, I've said it a million times before, but they're owned by big companies, and they've not really done a great job for us. We have a movement towards paper, which is great, but I also think that we need something that's going to check that paper as well, because historically people have been ballot stuffing and ballot stealing for many years. So there has to be a solution that makes sense, not just in one particular aspect, but all of them. We do have some serious security issues these days, and people really aren't doing a very good job paying attention to them. I mean, you need some good security teams to take a look at those machines and make sure that they're foolproof. One of the biggest things that I've done really is advocated for the use of open source technology, but open source is something that also needs to be secured as well. So, the idea really is to have a solution that's both secure, transparent, and something that's verifiable. And that's really what we need, and we're so far away from it. I would say we're almost like 4 or 5 generations behind the times, and it's getting a little scary now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think about making voting accessible online? Because millennials and the coming generations are not really keen on paper. Paper has become obsolete in a lot of things. I think a paper ballot would be a great thing to keep track. But what do you think about people suggesting like an online kind of voting system?
Well, I think it could be really convenient. The problem is we're increasing the security issues that we have, tenfold by having online voting. Maybe there's a solution at some point in the future, but I think right now we've got to be realistic. The paper ballots are awesome, but again, like, you need to double check, triple check everything. So you should have an electronic backup, just so that you can audit that paper and make sure that nobody's doing things that they aren't supposed to be doing with that. You should have cameras on these systems. There's a lot of things going on, but I think what ends up happening is people get distracted by these particular issues, and we're not really looking at the biggest problem that we have right now is tangible, that we can actually do something about pretty quickly, and that's our voter registration system issues. Mm-hmm. Los Angeles County had a ridiculous amount of problems, unfortunately, in the primary. And, we've taken a very extensive look into LA County and what they've done. And I mean, I've got some. I'm looking at some things that I'm just kind of shaking my head about because, you know, man, there's a lot of things you could do in there. You can pull people off the rolls, and then they go in to vote, and they say, well, you got a provisional ballot, and that makes a person feel good. But just because you have a provisional ballot doesn't mean that your vote will actually be counted in the election totals.
Yeah.
It may be counted in the provisional ballot totals. And so that sounds like a great soundbite. Like I could manipulate that wording, right, if I was a master politician, to make it sound like, you know, your vote was going to get counted when it really isn't. And, you know, just in Orange County, you know, they just did a report a few days ago that actually, I think it was like last week or something. But anyways, it just did a report, and it said that provisional ballots have increased tenfold since 2004.
Wow.
10 times as many provisional ballots are being cast. And so to me, I'm very concerned about that. There's also a massive potential for hacking of the voter registration databases if those are not secured properly. You know, there's a lot of issues that we have right now.
Let me ask you a question, Ruben. So you're saying it's not the machines. The machines aren't the major problem right now. You're saying it's the voter registration problem, which is more of a concern than the actual machines itself. Not changing the vote from the inside of the machine, but just purging people from the registration rolls and stuff. Is that what you're saying the problem is? If I had a plan of attack right now, I would go right after that and secure it.
Okay. That would be the first thing that I did, because it just every election, and we see this, we saw this in 2016. You know, in the primary season, we saw for the progressive candidates. Unfortunately, I think a lot of progressive voters were thrown off the voter rolls. Mm-hmm. And then in the general election, we saw Democrats thrown, you know, basically the entire Democrats thrown off. And so I'm concerned about that. It seems to be a pattern that repeats itself over and over and over again, but yet nothing is happening to repair the issue. So that would be the first thing I would attack. I think also, you know, when you're talking about solutions for voting, it's got to be all the way across the board, including voter registration, you know, all the way down to, you know, when you're casting the ballot.
Exactly.
And auditing, real auditing, like 1% is not enough. We do 1% here. That's it.
We only audit 1%. We talked about that too. So who is doing the removing of the registration? Because we see a lot of these, I would say, establishment like-minded Democrats posting online that the Republicans are purging votes now. The Republicans, when, you know, we've witnessed so much of the Democrats doing the fugaziness going on. I mean, I think the Mickey Kantz went in to vote in New York, and she was removed from the voter registration from her polling place. Well, who's removing these people, and how do we stop that?
So it's very methodical work, and it's kind of boring, and people don't want to really get into it. But you know, the numbers, the science doesn't lie. So, you know, when I've taken a look at, you know, in particular what happened in LA County, because we got a copy of the voter registration files for, you know, I think in between a 3-week period. And just the things that we saw, the amount of people that were removed, I was very concerned because I saw a lot, if you're familiar with the LA area, east of Crenshaw, you see a lot of people removed, and then just west of Crenshaw, everything's good. Yeah. So, wow. And why aren't these people being removed in that area? Well, it happens to be a very affluent area, just west of Crenshaw, and just east, it's not. So, to me, it looks like discrimination, and you know, I am getting at that kind of stuff, but the science doesn't lie, the numbers don't lie. I mean, if you take that stuff and you map it out against demographic maps, you see that there is a problem, and it's science. It's just the numbers don't lie. We're not paying attention to that.
Yeah. Are the Democrats just as guilty as the Republicans at doing this?
I don't know, because I don't know who's doing that, but the fact of the matter is it's happening. And it's hurting us. It's hurting progressives.
Yeah.
And then I would say, you know, during the general election cycle, it hurts Democrats as a whole. I mean, so is this like some? I mean, think about it. This happened. This happened to Bernie Sanders in the primary. It did. He lost a lot of voters from the provisional ballot issue and the voter registration file problems. And then the same thing happens when Clinton runs against Trump in the general election. So what's the deal? I mean, there's so many unanswered questions. That's why we need to be looking at this stuff and like paying attention to it.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if you're familiar, but Tim Canova won the lawsuit against Debbie Wasserman Schultz for what they were thrown away, the ballots were thrown away, and a judge said, okay, yeah, this happened. So it's one of those things where I think it's the people who are against any kind of progress, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. I think it is people that don't want people of color to vote, don't want minorities to vote, people that don't want the people in large numbers to vote, because when people vote in large numbers, they usually, go to the left. And so I think there's just an overall issue of the establishment attacking our elections in a way.
Ruben, I'm going to put something up here for you. I want to talk about this real quick. Because in 2008, there were, in the California primary, and as we know, the California primary is late in the primary season. In the 2008 California primary, the big battle between Hillary Rodham Clinton and Barack Obama, there were just under 5.1 million votes for that primary. Fast forward to 2016, when we had a record number of voter registration. I think they said 650,000 people registered to vote. New voters. We think we know who they're for, who excited new young voters out there. 6 weeks before, we had 650,000 new voters. And yet, we had the same amount of votes, almost 5.1 million, just under that. In other words, in 2016, there were only 18,000 new votes. Over the course of 8 years, with record voter registration 6 weeks prior, we're missing about 1.5 million votes. Where did they go, Ruben?
Well, and it's a great question. So take a look at the population too. The population's also grown in that time frame. And I think what's happening is people are removed from the voter rolls, I know somebody that worked on our campaign that was removed from the voter rolls. They worked on our campaign. Yeah. So what's happening there? It's like we shouldn't have to keep checking to see whether we're registered to vote or not. Right. I wish I had an answer for you. I mean, I sure have my suspicions, right. But those are unsubstantiated, of course, and very difficult to prove. The fact of the matter is that we just need a bunch of people to start looking at this. Like the voter registration files, by far our biggest problem right now. Got to do something, because I mean, look at New York. Look at how many people were removed there in 2016.
Exactly.
I mean,
I also wanted to talk about something that is also something easily fixable. The fact that voting is on a Tuesday when a lot of people work. The fact that, you're not automatically registered, as we said. The fact that a lot of polling places close inadvertently all of a sudden. Things that are an easy fix. Why is voting on a Tuesday something that we haven't even really paid attention to? Maybe voting should be more than one day, because sometimes people do work on the weekends too. So what do you think about that? What do you think about those solutions?
Ruben, I think you're frozen. Man, I hope we get Ruben Major back, because I have to ask questions about Alex Padilla. And I don't want to. Well, it looks like we lost him.
The interview.
It looks like we lost him, but that was Ruben Major. Hold on. Yeah, you're back. Sorry, Ruben. She was talking about election being on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, you can see me, right?
Yes.
Very well.
Okay. All right, great. So, it's funny. I hear people say, just traveling all over the state, what I've heard people say is, we need to make Election Day a holiday. And everybody gets up and they start cheering and clapping, and everybody believes in that. And then when it comes time for the legislature to vote on it, it never happens.
Right.
When it comes time for Congress to do something about that, submit a bill, they don't. And it just kind of makes you wonder if these people want people to vote or not. To me, it's very overwhelming, the response that you get when you say, let's make Election Day a holiday. I know people want a holiday, and that's great, but I don't think it's just that. I think the spirit of democracy would really be enhanced by having people getting out there to go vote.
Exactly.
Even if it's a holiday. And so for me, that's what I would advocate for. I think on a weekend would be a lot better, but then people work on the weekends too. So if you say it's a holiday and people are, to go out and vote on that day, then you bet your that they're going to go out there and
right.
and vote on that.
Well, yeah, you're making it more about, you're tying in the feelings of pride in your country to exerting your democracy. So it's obviously something that I think would actually increase voter turnout as well.
Absolutely.
Ruben, so couple last questions. We got to get you out of here. But in 2016, with all the fugaziness of the voting registration was going on, with all the record amount of new voters registered that votes didn't show up, who was the Secretary of State then?
Repeat that. I lost you for a second.
I said in 2016, when all the fugaziness was going on with the voter registration files, where we had a lot of votes just lost and an uber amount of provisional ballots, who was the Secretary of State in California in 2016?
I'll try to be diplomatic. So in 2016, the Secretary of State was Alex Padilla.
Okay. Give me a reason. Give me a reason right now on why I should vote for Alex Padilla, because I'm finding a hard reason to vote for him. I just don't want to vote for this guy because I'm big on election integrity. So is the fam. And give us a reason why we should vote for this guy.
Well, look, I ran against the guy, so it's hard for me to get out of that mode. But on the I think the way that I look at this thing is it doesn't matter who we have as long as they care. This isn't a Democrat or Republican issue. Voting is a red, white, and blue issue. It's a USA, it's a California issue. It's not. So, I don't know. I'm not happy with the way that things have been done, but I don't know how they're going to go in the future. I haven't had a chance to take a look at the campaigns over the past couple months because I've been trying to get my life back together after the campaign. But